Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2008 comedy drama titled Chaos Theory. Now, Chaos Theory runs for 87 minutes long. It is directed by Marcos Siega. It is produced by Barbara Kelly, Frederick Goldchan, and Erica Westheimer. The script was done by Daniel Taplitz and Kathy Gorey. The score was done by Gilad Benamram, and the cinematography was done by Ramsey Nichol, and the editing was done by Nicholas Erasmus. The stars of the movie are Ryan Reynolds, Stuart Townsend, Emily Mortimer, Sarah Chalke, and Mike Erwin. As much as I enjoyed the romantic comedy in all of its formulaic glory, I was hoping to enjoy Chaos Theory. I felt that Ryan Reynolds was custom made to play the part of neurotic public speaker Frank Allen as he conveys the emotion and general likeness that the character possesses. But the sad news is that this low-budgeted, obscure romantic comedy is an illogical and incoherent mess. So everyone may look at this movie in different ways, and your opinions, whether you agree or disagree with me, will be respected no matter what. I always respect people's opinions. You don't have to agree with me, but at the same time, you don't have to shoot me in the foot. But what I don't see here is how anyone would give this movie a perfect 10 or let alone an 8-star rating. The acting, which was actually the least worst thing about this movie, can only be rendered at average, just say the least. The movie's plot seems very disorganized and very unsettling throughout, and the conflict within the characters lack in anything considered logical. It also seemed like you can't decide on a specific genre, leaving us scratching our heads in utter confusion. I mean, what is the genre? Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? I could never come up with what its intentions were. To be blunt, this is definitely not Ryan Reynolds' defining moments in his cinematic career, and maybe you might like the movie if you cannot think the notion about how this movie is just one big waste of time. So here, the opening scene kicks off in a tasteless perspective as a group of chums are talking about retarded nonsense like giving names to their genitalia. But the worst part of it all is that they have given them names. You may probably think penis humor is funny when really I think it's plain fucking retarded. I mean, talk about insulting one's intelligence. So, while at the New Year's Eve party, a woman named Susan, played by Emily Mortimer, has a resolution to find someone to love and to marry, and of course, we all know her intentions are to marry Frank. Thanks to the traditional usage of sound reasoning you only find in movies, which makes this gimmick both overdone, stale, and completely done to death. Cut to several years later, Frank's life takes in a turn, a new and very disappointing turn, as his wife sets the clock 10 minutes behind, leaving him late for work, and he arrives late to get on his ferry. And the illogical sense seems to also stems from that little scene alone. So now, okay, I don't know how aquatic transportation operates. That's totally above my head. But it's stupid that the guy who rides the ferry would not let Frank on. I mean, what the fuck? There was no reason for that. It was not like there were other people in back of Frank that they didn't raise the ramps Yet, so there was no reason for depriving Frank from getting on the ferry. It's not like one more person on the bus will sink the fucking boat. So just give him a break and get him on the ferry. Plus, he would have to wait another hour before getting on the next one. There was no excuse to let one more person aboard the ferry. It's not like one more person is going to blow up the boat. Sure, it's a minor quip, but the whole script felt like it was written by a high school student working on a class project. It was that amateur and pedestrian. The movie just runs under the 90-minute mark, which is okay, fine for a low-budget romantic comedy. That's pretty much about the length a romantic comedy with a low budget should be. Okay, I respect that. But there were two very distracting subplots that upstage the main plot of the story that goes on for way too long. When Frank drives a pregnant lady, played by Jocelyn Lowen, to the hospital, we are enlightened to over 3 minutes of him telling her to breathe. Okay, yes, I find that, okay, it was nice that, a pregnant woman needed to go to the hospital. Her water broke. She was desperate. And I thought that was a very kind thing for him to do. But to spend 3 minutes of boredom just saying, just breathe, breathe in, breathe out, was just so contrived. And then there's the convoluted subplot where we discover that the daughter he thought was biologically his was really not, because he's got Klinefelter syndrome. And in layman's terms, he's sterile. And to top that all off, we see our principal character on a melancholy stroll to the lake where he bawls in tears, which goes on for another 3 minutes. Please stop the torture! In addition, Frank is vexed that Sarah tweaked his alarm clock 10 minutes late, tarnishing his punctual reputation, which leads him to succumb to withdrawn activities like drinking and chasing after an attractive young blonde played by Sarah Chalke, and almost succeeded in getting in bed with her. Here we see another plot hole as to why would a devoted father want to commit an act of promiscuity with another woman as to wound his psychological scars. Let alone have his buddy named Buddy, played by Stuart Townsend there, who seems to arbitrarily act flirty towards his wife. But it's all null and void because in the end, he never nails her anyway. So what's the point? It all sums up to one pointless cliche that served no purpose to the story. Another deterring scene that totally made my blood boil was when the nurse who delivered the pregnant lady's baby seemed to mysteriously know Frank and Susan's phone number. And when she tried to call Frank to tell her the news, he was not available at the time. The nurse, as professional as she can be, thought Frank was the father to this pregnant woman's child. And that is when all hell breaks loose. Susan now thinks he's living a double life behind her back, and she kicks him out of his house. If he's sterile and can't have kids, then who's the biological father to Jessie? And if he's sterile How could he had impregnated a woman? I mean, where's the logic to that? I mean, if he's sterile, he can't have kids. Use common sense. So anyhow, Buddy tries to persuade Susan that Frank loves her and is an honest one-woman man. His dialogue provided was weak and very stone-faced. Up until then, his character was drier than a 2-week-old prune. And how did the pregnant woman know where Frank lived when she left the hospital? Baffling. That's how I best describe this movie. It's totally baffling. There's just no common sense. It's very, very illogical and out of place. No wonder why it didn't get too much accolades. If that's not enough, well, there's another illogical scenario. Is that a week before her marriage to Frank, she slept with Buddy. And when Frank points that out, she made the excuse that it was done after he promised to be faithful to her. We also see at the beginning of the movie, how the groom is having second thoughts in marrying his fiancée. Of course, we see a older version of Frank, and his daughter is probably in her late teens, early 20s. And she's now marrying this guy. But he's having his doubts because she was having a secret affair. Well, this groom is now having second thoughts in marrying his fiancée because during a temporary breakup, she made romance with another guy. So his daughter was being promiscuous. And he's having his second thoughts about her, that she's not too honest and faithful. So then Frank has the audacity to say in a passive-aggressive way that it's normal and that he's lucky to have her. Seriously? Man, I tell you, this guy definitely needs better friends and an honest lady. Or just stay single for life. This movie is just plain frustrating. And the more I sat through it, the more and more appalled I got because the movie just lacks in any kind of logic. No wonder why this movie was pretty low budgeted. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm going to give it any Razzies or anything like that. And like I said, the acting was really not the main problem here. I think it was just the script that really, really deterred this movie quite badly. Because it was just so frustrating to watch. I just didn't know what to think. So when all the chips flies, I really can't recommend this movie very much. And if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, the only number I could give it is a 4. So my only 2 words about this movie is skip it. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. Just remember, be kind, be courteous, and don't be rude. And that just does not apply to me. It also applies to the people who write comments in my section below. Don't be rude to them either. Okay? You respect people on my page. Or just don't write anything at all. Okay? I'm just giving people just that fair warning. I don't care what people write on my page, but just don't be rude to them, and don't be rude back to me. So with all said and done, until then, I'll be back again next week with another movie review. So until next time we meet, this is Eric Carrot Rider saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.